Is it, who's on that, Lena and Ashley? Oh, that was just other show now, so yeah, just
Okay.
Lena.
Okay,
So,
great.
we've got a form.
All right, since we have a quorum, let's call our meeting of the Environmental and Energy Stewardship Subcommittee to order. Thank you all for being with us today, and Lena and Ashley are joining us online, I believe. Everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda and the meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda and follow it, as well as approve the minutes?
I move approval to follow.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. We shall proceed. And we have public comment, and we do have some folks with us today. So is anyone wanting to provide public comment?
Yes. So my name is Anna Osberg. I'm with Plastic Free WMC, and just want to kind of reiterate all we've done over the last couple of years. The first bag ban was in 2007, and that was 16 years ago. We've been studying this issue for the last 4 years, really collecting the local data. I think we have proven that it's pretty popular for constituents. It's an easy step in the fight against climate change, and it's not unduly burdensome on both our businesses or our residents. Durham is posed to vote on their version of the bill in September, and we are pretty confident they'll vote yes. So Buncombe County would not be alone in pushing this forward. I really think now's the time to do it, and we really encourage y'all to vote and get this moving through the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Anyone else?
Thank you. For those of you that were here last time, you heard us give you all the reasons why Buncombe County needs to take the lead on this. We need one uniform policy around the county. We don't need to have one set of rules in Asheville and another set of rules in Woodfin, but we need to have it. And along those lines, this past Tuesday night, Woodfin Town Commission voted for a resolution in support of opting into a county ordinance as soon as the county passes it. And we expect similar ordinance resolutions to pass in Woodville and Black Mountain. So people are looking to Buncombe County to take the lead on this. I know there's been some questions about, okay, is this legal or not? And as I think we mentioned last time, Duke Law Center, Southern Environmental Law Center have done a lot of research on this and feel like under North Carolina law, it is legal for local governments to take this action. In addition to that, the City of Asheville attorneys have also indicated they feel it's doable. And also the Woodfin town attorney also gave his opinion that this was something that they could legally do. So we encourage you to do what's best for our environment here locally. And every month we delay another 11 million plastic bags end up in our landfills, our gutters, in our rivers and in our area. So thank you.
I'm not here to speak, just in case anybody had any questions, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with public comment? Okay, thank you all very much.
Terry, I just want to let you know Parker's online as well.
Parker is, oh, great. I guess, Parker, you want me to continue?
Please, yes.
Okay, we'll continue. So next up, Jennifer and Sybil will be going over the water quality grant guidelines with us.
Sure. So I did send this out in advance, so hopefully y'all had some time to look at it. But I'll just kind of scroll through it and the highlights. I want to, hopefully I've captured the conversation that we had at the last meeting in this document, but this is intended to be the guidelines document that would be shared with the potential applicants. So hopefully it gives them enough information to write up a proposal for our Clean Water Fund. So just, again, we talked about having just a few projects, so 1 to 3 projects with the cost ranging from 30 to 100,000. So that's in there. If you want to keep scrolling a little bit more. And another point was that we wanted the focus to be on construction, so keep going down a little so that's in there in that paragraph. We did,
We also called out the watershed plan,
Oh,
so
yes,
needing to
excuse
be in the,
I have a question about
Yeah.
that, because I know one thing we talked about was specifically naming which plans are approved too, so it's really clear to folks. I think that would be,
we need to add that, okay.
Yeah,
List.
I think that will save a lot of confusion and probably a lot of questions and extra work for y'all if it's clear.
So if there's additional plans developed, they would be added in the future.
Because each year we'd be doing this, so we just look at what those plans were each year
Yeah.
and update that portion of the application.
Okay.
Yeah,
We feel like we're pretty clear, like which ones have plans and which ones don't. There's no ambiguity. There's not some plans out there we don't know about.
I mean, and the state would have a list of that,
Yeah.
wouldn't they, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect, we'll add that, thank you.
Quick question on that too.
Yeah.
Is this, could it be linked to that directly in this?
yeah, like what, could we make 9-element watershed plan blue and you could click on it and it would bring
I
up.
guess that's my
what
question.
you're
What
asking.
format will this be downloaded and could it be hot linked just to
Okay.
see all the time being like, I got it on to every single person.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Okay, great, yep. Okay. Again, focus on construction, and that one was, we would allow construction drawings. That's what we talked about in our last conversation, and engineering studies, but not water quality studies and testing. We do have in here that a match is required. We didn't put a specific, must be 10%, 20%, anything like that. The way we kind of talked about last time was that the more match you have, the better. And that shows up in the scoring. Okay, so.
Does, and like with in-kind contributions count, or is that purely like a financial match?
We talked about last time not letting them count. And that's down, I think, further in the leveraging, your number 9, later on in the document, it talks about in-kind should not be included, so.
And just one more piece of clarity, we say here that water quality studies or testing aren't included. If someone wanted money to help develop a new watershed plan, would that be permissible or not?
No.
No. Okay, so it just has to be one of the existing and then.
Okay, we can add that.
Yeah.
Clarity. Okay. Okay. All right. Keep going. Oh, I do want to just make sure everyone has a chance to look at the timeline. We're hoping, if depending on how this conversation goes, that we can move forward and go ahead and open the grant application on September 1st. We do want to come back to the commissioners on the 5th, the full board of commissioners, to kind of let everyone know. This was adopted in the budget, but we wanted to share, with the public and also the rest of the commissioners about the program. And then they would be due October 2nd, and we would score them, staff would review them, and then bring them back to you all October 20th. And then if all goes well and we're able to come to some consensus, we would take that recommendation to the board on November 7th and negotiate contracts, and folks would have from December 2023 to June 2025 to complete projects. Like what we talked about.
I have a quick question about the timeline. And not selfishly, I won't be here on October 20th. But if there was an opportunity to weigh in advance, I'd be happy to do that. Also, I know that there's not a ton of time for staff review, but just wanted to say, like, if electronic review and comments is helpful.
So staff will be doing the evaluations, the additional evaluations.
Yes, yeah, that's what we talked about. And then you would share those with this group, and then they would make the recommendations to the full board.
I think it sounds really good. So I don't think we've talked about this before, so it's probably not possible to add this in any kind of formal way, but just part of what, I think the idea here is that this will be the only time we do this, right? That this will hopefully be like something we do for, recurring over the years to come. Maybe even it turns out to be awesome, scale it up a bit. So I just wonder, in a way, maybe if we keep doing this for a while, then the potential applicants will sort of recognize, like, oh, this is a recurring thing. This isn't a one-off deal. But I guess I would just say, like, if applicants ask about it, that perhaps we could just share, like, the idea is that this is going to be a new program that we sustain, right? So, because I would imagine a lot of people look at this and say, well, there's only so much you can do with one application. But the idea would be, like, for really good projects, hopefully they could submit, get approved for funding, do it, and then kind of keep, kind of like a multi-year plan to work on things. So anyway, I just want to share that because it is a pretty modest amount, right, to start with. But if people see this is a new program that we're going to sustain, then hopefully some groups will get really energized by being invested in this with the idea of, like, doing this, on a recurring basis. So just a thought. But I think it sounds good. I mean, to really formalize that, we would need to get we would need the commission to approve this as more like recurring funding. Because right now it's just the funding that's in the budget this year.
Yes,
right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have to carry it over to the next year, but that's fine. That's with budget. But yes, if you want to keep this going, it would be something like, what we do for conservation.
Yeah,
or,
it's there until somebody says it's not there.
Yes. So one other thing on the timeline, and speaking of recurring, and it's good to know that that is what you all are thinking. If we do want to do it again, we try to get on the same time frame as what strategic partnership does with their grants, which is they get those kind of in order and done before the budget is adopted. So we're going to have to play a little catch up if this is successful, so that we can have them ready before the end of the next fiscal year. If that makes sense. So,
Okay, but proceed with this timeline for this.
yes, I mean, we don't have an
right.
option with this one. We're behind the 8 ball. Sure. We'll try to get on that schedule for the next fiscal year.
And noting the 2025 deadline, we can report on how much interest there was in the program this year, but as you're doing budget for 2025, we won't have anything to bring forward yet. So just, to note that. And then, Meg, for your question, does the entire board or subcommittee want to see the applications? Or do you just want staff to score them and bring and give you a summary? We received 8 applications and give you some kind of high level breakdown? Or do you want to see these applications?
I would like to see the application too, in case there's a question, something that you wrote that I want to think go look at. And that's useful.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
Would you like to be added as someone or a viewer in the grant portal so you can go in and see it, or would you prefer to just have printed out?
That's fine. That's probably the easiest.
Whatever
for
is
you.
easier. Yeah. So what I would say.
I don't know how the grant portal works exactly.
I mean, we usually email those out to
Okay.
commissioners, so you don't have to deal with that.
Whatever is
Yeah.
easier for you.
Because we do that for our affordable housing.
Yeah. No, I don't feel like I need access to any sort of portal.
I mean, what more?
What I would say though is like having at least a day or two to at least review, because I feel like if we come in on the 20th, we'll be like, what are you talking about? Like, it'll just save more time.
Okay.
Than us like backtracking and be like, let's go through that one again. Which one is this?
And so
Perhaps by the September meeting, we might be able to give you an update on how many applications we've received, but they won't have closed yet. So we can maybe give you some,
That's fine. To Meg's point, I mean, if you just email them out just a few days before, we're gonna be going over them. It gives us a chance to read through and be prepared.
yeah, so from staff, if we can, try to get them something on the 16th, which is the Monday, before your meeting on that Friday.
Yeah, and it wouldn't even have to be like, you're finished with your recommendations, just so we can read through. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay.
That'd be great.
All right. Let's see. Moving right along. There's not too much in the next section. It's mainly if you got questions or anything, Jennifer, one. So, and then moving along, this one just talks about the pieces of the application. So this is kind of what folks will see once they get into the grant portal. So your basic stuff, the amount you want, name, description of the project, where it's located, the population served. We did, it's one of our organization and commissioner goals to make sure we incorporate equity. So we did include our equity map, and we're asking that that folks use that map to determine if they're in certain areas. And this scoring, I don't know how, probably not familiar with this, but the 94 or greater ranking, so is the higher, poverty and other measures on this map.
For others,
So-
is it basically this? I know that you have some
Yes,
online version.
It is. So, I'm not explaining that well, but there's like 4 or 5 different gradations, and the 94 or greater is the 2 highest. So the idea is that if the projects are within 2 miles of the projects are in those areas, they would be scored higher.
And that scoring is within your
I think so.
criteria. Okay, I didn't see it in there, but maybe
Okay.
I overlooked it.
Oh, this is fun. We need to
Is it?
fix that. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of incorporated into equity, but we can clarify that.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to clarify that better. Because
Okay.
when I'm looking at equity, it just looks like it's being judged on how good they come at a definition of equity.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Doesn't say much about the map, like a definition.
And just to call out, there's a little bit of difficulty in calculating this based on the fact that water is moving. And so if you make an improvement downstream, so we use the definition of 2 miles downstream. We needed a cutoff. So if anybody feels that that's too far or not far enough, but it's a little challenge to come up with what that impact, because it couldn't technically be anybody downstream.
Yeah. We did kind of that one out of the air.
I mean, it's kind of hard.
Just the project description. Again, the leveraging speaks to, we do require match. If they have a higher match, they will get more points.
Should we do like a match with another agency, or, I mean, it's really any source, right? It didn't have to be like a government organization, but I mean, if someone's like, hey, we've got a donor that's giving us $10,000 plus $50,000 from the county, that would be fine too, right? So would that be confusing to anyone, or do you think that would be?
So we can
clear
just
then?
say a match is required and get rid of from other
I just
agencies.
think of agencies as kind of has a government kind of
Yeah, you're right.
connotation, as opposed to like organizations or individuals. Yeah, maybe just say a match is required.
Would we allow the development of the plan to be counted as match?
That seems in kind, right?
I think we
Well,
say,
yeah, well,
monetary.
Yeah.
So what makes you ask that question?
Well, I'm just thinking that there's definitely costs associated with developing the plan.
Right.
And some of it is just sweat equity, but others is hiring consultants and things like that. And so if people are challenged with finding match, is that an allowable source? Or would we prefer to just keep it to actual project implementation match?
Seems like that was the conversation, but
I think just leave it kind
As
of,
in,
I mean, I think just saying this, I mean, obviously, I think it implies kind of more future match, right? Going forward kind of thing.
Okay.
we'll learn some this year from this, right? We all know that.
This is true. Did someone try to say something?
Yeah. Parker, did you?
I think you answered my questions. I was trying to determine if we were talking about like using the existing plan as a match. And if I understood Brownie correctly, I would agree. I think we would prefer something forward-looking, something they do in conjunction with the application.
Just did, it would be a better case than like, oh, somebody did this plan 5 years ago, we're trying to count that as a match. So I think let's just kind of keep it open and see how strong the arguments people make are.
This might be a section where people ask us questions, so I'm just wanting to make sure I answer it correctly. If somebody says to me, well, how do you define match?
You could just say, we haven't defined it.
How about you define it for me? Yeah, okay.
Make your best case. Right?
Okay.
Sorry, going back up to the letters of support piece.
Yeah.
The way, speaking of sort of vague things, that looks like you can do that. And you also don't need to do that if you don't have a letter of support. Is that how that's supposed to read? Says like, if applicable, it just seems like people could be like also asking questions about this.
So I think the thought here was, say the town of Black Mountain is the applicant and the town of Black Mountain owns the property.
Mhm.
There's less of a need for a letter of support than say the property is owned by someone else and they're
Right.
agreeing to allow the work to happen on it.
Right, okay.
So I think that's why that was the if applicable, because if you have site control, you own the place and you're applying to do this work.
Yeah.
Who's supporting?
Mhm. Okay. So if but just, I guess, if the town of Black Mountain, for example, is that person, is that entity, do you still want them to tell you any broader community outreach that they've done? Is that important? Even, I would say yes to that.
Yeah,
I would say yes.
Yeah, I would say yes to that, so that's a good
Do you want to
point.
get
Yeah.
rid of the if applicable?
I feel like you just might get questions about that, so.
Okay.
I think it's two separate things maybe that you're looking at. Like the description of community outreach efforts is something.
Is one question.
And then the letters of support
Yes.
are.
Yes, so we can
Get rid of that whole part.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, makes sense. Again, equity, this is where the definition of equity is requested. And organizational capacity, that's just talking about, your ability to carry it out. Budget narrative, budget form. And then sustainability, that's going to be important that people show that they can continue to maintain it. Rest is just kind of boilerplate stuff that we require for grants. Anything in that section?
I have a question on the review and the different bullet points there. Are those weighted in any sort of, okay.
So we just did 5 points for each.
Yep.
So we tried to keep it simple this time around. We made, as we do it, we can definitely change it next year. So the items here, this is where I kind of probably want to spend the most time talking about, but needs, so project need, project plan, the results, the partnership and community buy-in, capacity, equity, and budget. And again, each one, whoops, I see what there is. 5 points for a total of 35 points. And I think that's pretty much most everything in this document. So if you don't mind, can we scroll to the scoring document, which outlines each of those review items more? Uh-oh, yeah, that's not gonna show up very well.
I can make it fit, but then you can't.
It would be super tiny, yeah. So again, need for project is really talking about the information that's included in the water management plan, and how well they're able to present that and the project. The project plan is really the timeline well, construction and the timeline. Actually, no, timelines of proposed results, excuse me. So this is just talking about the construction.
Yeah, how well is the project outlined in the existing plan, and what you're proposing lines up with that?
The results is the timeline, and then, you know, trying to show some sort of quantitative result, but that's going to be hard to prove, but we'd still like people to, you know, talk about what they anticipate will be achieved.
They should be able to say what the anticipated impact will be from the project, whether maybe not parts per million of, you know, but they should be able to say reduce sediment load, you know, or they might not be able to give a by how much, but I think they should be able to clearly articulate what the intended impact is going to be.
Because the plans include that, right?
Exactly.
So it's really just reiterating what's in the plan.
Exactly.
What the plan says the project is, and what the plan says it will impact. The next one is partnership and community buy-in. That's just making sure that, again, the partners or, you know, participating organizations are supportive and that there's a cash match of some sort. And then capacity, that's just talking about, do you have the right people, the right number of people who are able to carry out the project.
And is that where the maintenance plan comes into place too?
Yes, I think there's a part in there that talks about the long-term maintenance.
Mhm.
Yeah. And equity, we'll add, as Commissioner Wells recommended, the scoring from the map, and then also talking about the definition and explaining your strategy. And then the last part is the budget.
Question, that all looks good. I know when we had the conversation, there was a conversation about the additional benefits. I think it was recreational, educational, ecological, community, economic. There was some discussion about wanting to see those additional benefits. Is that included somewhere in one of these?
To me, that's like in the results. Yeah.
Let's add that under results. So other benefits. Okay.
I think if we do add it, we just want to make sure in this scoring rubric, we just want to make sure we put that in the application too. So just so that people know that they're going to be scored on it.
I feel like there was somewhere in the application.
Was there?
you mentioned it. I feel like I saw it there somewhere. Okay, somebody else. Okay.
All right.
Do we ever cap contingency, percentage of contingency in the budget?
What do you do for your grants?
Well, it depends. I mean, we just saw, we saw a project come forward and they put a 5% contingency in it, and we were like, that's ridiculous. And so the recommendation was 20%, and yet 20% on I mean, this is a small project, $30,000, maybe not that big of a deal. But I didn't know if you had a thought on contingency.
So a cap on how much we would allow them to.
Correct. If anybody ask about, because it's kind of like the miscellaneous too, right? I mean, it's allowing people to kind of say, well, we don't know how to account for this money, but we need it.
Right.
And so,
What would be your recommendation based on what you're seeing?
if it's a construction project, I think 20% contingency is fine. Anything shy of that, I think it's a little high.
I don't think we should put a specific parameter into the proposal.
No, not into the proposal. This is
I'm
more.
agreeing with what you're saying,
Yeah.
because it is really depends. I mean, someone
Okay.
might already have an actual, bid in hand, so they don't need much.
Right.
If someone else hasn't done that yet, then 20% might be the reason. I think it just kind of depends on where they're at, right? How certain they are.
Okay. So just, yeah, I wasn't suggesting we type that out and just giving me some feedback as if questions came in around that, if you had a.
And then you see some of the other public benefit. And
Oh, where is
it's in there, it's number 11, and required elements, so.
There it is.
Okay.
Great. All right. We'll just make sure we add it to the scoring rubric though. Okay.
Good job, thank you all. Put that together.
That's great. And I think we've already got it started in the portal. So we got a tight turnaround. So we're trying to move forward quickly again. All right.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Anything else on the water quality grant? Or everybody's good with moving forward? Okay, thank you all very much. And next up is Jackie and Jeremiah with the Sustainable Fleet Update.
We still have Ashley.
We do. She's.
I just don't know why we don't see partners.
I don't mean, it's gotta be some kind of highlighted view or something.
All right, so yeah, we're doing some new stuff with Fleet, and so felt like a good time to share with you all what we're up to. Just starting with a quick look at the current status towards fleet electrification. On the public safety side, about 15% of that fleet is hybrid at this point. We're giving them credit for one EV, but that's a golf cart essentially. So, and then on the general government side, we've got about 25% of our fleet that's either natural gas, electric, or hybrid. But maybe something that's a little more optimistic is looking at our orders for vehicles purchased for fiscal year 24 budget. And so 80% of those new purchases are either electric or hybrid, or we intend them to be. We can get the vehicles we want.
And that's for the entire fleet, public safety in general?
Yes.
It's everything.
Yeah, FY '24 orders, yeah. And to be clear, this FY '24 is the first year we've had a sustainable fleet policy in place to help guide those decisions, right? So we hope that this is what we're going to continue to see going forward.
2030 outlook. I mean, this is like a rapidly evolving field with like constantly changing technology. So this made me a little nervous. So I hedged a bit and did a couple different scenarios. So the bar on the far left is like the current, what we just saw on the previous slide. Then there's the business as usual bar in the middle. And so that will kind of extrapolates our process from fiscal year 24. So we replaced 3% of the general government fleet. So at that rate, we're not going to hopefully electrify our fleet by 2030.
We only replace, I'm sorry, let me make sure I heard you correctly. We only replace 3% per year.
For fiscal year 24, we only replaced 3% of our general government fleet.
That must be low as an average, right? It's ours will last that long.
Yeah, I would say it is low compared to many other years. This was a challenging budget year. We had a lot of decisions had to be made. And we did not replace as many vehicles as we typically probably would have. So, and year to year, that's a change.
And the replacement rate for public safety was a little bit higher, 5%. And there's some other challenges like supply chain issues and market availability that we hope will improve through 2030. Kind of a more optimistic approach would be like with some increased investment. We're replacing 10% of the fleet every year. So that means we're rolling over our fleet every 10 years. So under a business as usual scenario, by 2030, half of our fleet will still be gas or diesel vehicles. In the kind of more optimistic scenario, less than a quarter of our fleet will still be gas or diesel vehicles. And this is assuming that our fleet isn't growing. You know, I couldn't make any kind of informed decision about our. I would feel like I would be presenting these just BS numbers if I was predicting how our fleet might grow. You know, we are trying to optimize the vehicles that we do have and right size our fleets and, you know, through like motor pools and stuff like that. But we also anticipate services to grow.
I'm still, want to make sure I understand the chart. So when you say that there's the status, there's the current business as usual, and then the investment scenario. So the investment scenario is describing sort of a future year, more aggressive procurement policy around clean vehicles than the current year. Is that my interpretation? Is that helpful to interpret?
From now to 2030, we are replacing 10% of our fleet. And then there's also some assumed like market availability and maybe some cultural shifts, particularly on the public safety side.
But basically increasing it to where we're replacing 10% of vehicles versus the 3% we did this year. And that 10% will get us to the investment numbers.
Right, we start in fiscal year 25 and do that through fiscal year 30. That's what we would expect to see by fiscal year 20.
And that assumes in the future purchase years that the mix of like electric, hybrid, and conventional looks similar to what would happen this year, or is it assuming that future years is sort of more optimistic on the percentage of clean vehicles?
Yeah, more optimistic.
Yeah, the big tipping point would be public safety. At the end of the day, we are starting to see the market develop for pursuit rated electric vehicles. This will be the first year any of them are available, and so we don't expect that they're going to be widely available
This coming year.
Right? But we do expect that as years go on, more and more will become available. And that tipping point for us being public safety, because there's such a large percentage of our fleet, right? We got 500 vehicles, 300 of them are sheriff vehicles, right? That once those start to move in that direction and those become available, the turnover becomes much more rapid because they also replace their vehicles much more frequently than any other department does.
It's pretty long.
Ton of miles on them, accidents, you name it. They go through way more vehicles than anybody else. So it's a huge tipping point. Once the public safety market availability happens.
And you said total around 500 vehicles, 300 of those thereabouts
Yes,
public
pretty much.
safety.
That's the ballpark number. Yes, that's about right. Any other questions on this?
Just in like that, sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just repeating this year. It takes a while. And Jackie, you said of the 3%, 80%, sorry, the ones you're replacing, 3% this year, 80% of those are electric.
Or hybrid.
Or hybrid. Got it. In my brain.
So we're hoping one of the tools that like will get us to 2030 is the fleet telematics program. So we launched this at the beginning of the fiscal year. We have about 77 of these devices installed now, but essentially it gives us information about vehicle location, vehicle speed, daily mileage, idling times, harsh braking. So
I will love that, I'm sure.
It's super, yeah, it's very big brother.
Oh, yeah.
And I should say that these are only installed on general government vehicles. They're not going to be shared. So, but one of the cool functions is the image on the right. So every vehicle that has a telematics device gets like an EV suitability score. And it also will calculate anticipated fuel cost savings and carbon emissions reductions associated with that particular vehicle as well.
Okay.
So when we were doing the vehicle evaluation, right, evaluating vehicle requests for like, I don't know, is this a good candidate for an EV or not? You know, their annual mileage maybe, but maybe they're driving 200 miles a day and then it sits for 2 weeks. So having like peak data mileage is a really nice tool for us moving forward.
Quick question on that. We kind of chuckled on that this is not in the sheriff. But like, like as the culture shifts and as technology changes, like, do you think you will? Who knows? That's too hypothetical.
I think our job right now is to like find our ally in the
Yeah.
sheriff's department and build trust.
Yeah.
And improve that relationship.
That's all I need to say.
And I will say the sheriff has been really supportive of doing this. And so I think I would like ask him about doing this and he said, yeah, he'd be
Oh, cool.
interested in doing it.
It just seems like a hard nut to crack, but if we could start getting data around it, that would be awesome. Cool.
Yeah, again, there's such a large percentage of our fleet, the more data we can get from them, the better. So, yeah, we do have folks that.
That's great.
Will be able to do this.
And Jeremiah,
Mhm.
I'm curious, I guess other than pursuit rated vehicle availability, are there any other challenges you see for electrifying the public safety fleet? I guess I'm thinking of like community paramedics and like other versions of public safety.
So we're actually going to talk about an ambulance project in just a second, because we have several ambulances, obviously, and ambulances get 2 miles to the gallon or something like that, because they're constantly running. So we're going to talk about that in just a second.
Awesome.
Pursuit rated is definitely the biggest nut to crack when it comes to public safety, because so many of our sheriff's deputies require that for their vehicles. With other public safety, it's really just about range anxiety and getting folks accustomed to that concept of, again, but we're gonna get into some more of this later, so I don't want to jump too far ahead, but charging infrastructure and understanding like what those needs are. I think we can get folks to that place, but in my head, again, that big tipping point is the sheriff and the patrol deputies being comfortable with them, understanding the charges with them. I think, again, I said this to you just a few weeks ago, like once you get behind the wheel, you're gonna get over the fear of it. It's a more exciting car to drive, and these guys like to drive. So I'm confident that they're gonna really like these vehicles eventually. But market availability is the big thing.
Estimated EV range, is that in a day? Is that
Per charge, right? So like,
per charge?
yeah, so currently, if you look at like the Chevy Blazer EV, which is brand new, just hitting the market right now, that's the second like pursuit rated sheriff's specific vehicle. I think it's somewhere in the 240 miles to a charge range. Most of us, that's way more than you can need in a single day. However, though, if you're a patrol deputy, you can reach that pretty easily. Those guys occasionally do drive 300 miles a day. According to them, it'd be great if we had telematics to let us know for sure like how accurate that statement is. But there is still some range anxiety, and I think when you say 240, again, for the vast majority of us, that's way more than a day's worth of driving. But they'd like to see that number higher. Right now, that's where the market's at.
Part of it is just also like how rapidly they recharge too, right? I think people kind of start off with like thinking about how long is the range, and as you kind of get more familiar with the way EVs work, it's like, it's really more important like how fast they'll recharge than what their range is, because if it recharges quickly, then it's really no big deal. It's just really not that much longer than stopping for gas. But if it's a slower recharge, then it is kind of more of an issue. So like,
Yeah. And most of these new ones are going to it's pretty darn rapid. And it's not that much different than stopping at a gas station. I can't stop to charge when I'm chasing somebody down. You don't stop for gas when you're chasing somebody down either. So I mean, like, you just need to make sure you And that's one of the great things in my head about EVs is if you start the day with a full tank of gas, right? Like you're always starting your day without having to think about that initial stuff. So I digress.
I
I can talk
love
about myself.
driving by to gas stations. That's so much fun.
Yeah, it is nice. Apologize for that off track.
Just a little bit more like functionality of the telematic system, so we can look at some driver behavior stuff like idling, quick starts, harsh braking, all of which impact fuel efficiency.
Go visit.
One thing we haven't really explored much is route optimization. So this is a vehicle from yesterday, and it just makes several trips up and down 74. So can we plan our day better to avoid that? Maybe not, but just something that we now have a tool. So Big Brother. We are not putting driver names on them, which I feel like is important. It is a little bit Big Brother.
There we go.
The next big piece of the puzzle, like Jeremiah mentioned, is charging infrastructure. So this map on the right, all those blue dots are current charging locations. So we have 10 different charging locations, 32 chargers spread among them. 4 of those are publicly available and 6 are fleet only. The red dots are just like, I got Ronnie on the phone one day and we sat down, we were talking about maybe potential future locations if we want to get that infrastructure and to kind of spread that out in the county. So there's a lot of like libraries and rec centers and stuff like that. Another function of that telematics program, I could put a geofence around the Sandy Bush Rec Center and see how many times our vehicles come within 10 miles of that. And maybe it's 0, maybe we don't need.
Oh, I do see them there some.
Okay, yeah, so that can help us cite future locations as well.
And you said of the blue ones, all blue are current, and you said 4 of those are public?
Correct.
So Land of Sky, and where else is?
But the college deck, the East Asheville Library,
Okay.
and Casa.
Okay.
The picture on the left is the Land of Sky chargers that you just mentioned, and those are our newest project, and those were fully funded by the Volkswagen mitigation grant. And then, we're also trying to look out into the future. So we've been working with General Services. We've been a super supportive partner in all of this. And Ronnie's currently working with an electrical engineer to do some initial design work and a cost feasibility analysis to do some major electrical upgrades at the college parking deck. And that's because we are electrifying our fleet, but also because there's those new kind of forward-facing departments that need to 35 and things. So we need to make sure we have the infrastructure for them.
Yeah, as you can imagine, parking decks aren't designed to handle a ton of electrical load. So adding 20 plus new charging stations requires some infrastructure upgrades. So we're trying to figure out what those are, what it's going to cost, and have those ready to go so that as we move forward with the facilities plan and start moving everybody into 35, we expect their cars are coming with them. And we expect those cars to eventually be electric. So we want to be ready as they start moving in.
Do they have to be covered?
Do they have to be covered? No, have to. They
Maybe
will
charging
be.
stations?
I mean, the
So it-
vehicles that
No,
are
no, the charging apparatus could be out of the parking lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. They don't have to be covered, installed. It depends. You might have to bore to get to it. So with the parking deck, the likelihood is probably do it on one lower second or third. And we can run the conduit straight up through the middle. And it's less expensive to do that. But that's kind of what the analysis is trying to tell us is what is, we are going to have to upgrade the distribution panels out there because they are not. I mean, it's a parking deck. There's just lights. There's not much else out there. So it needs some upgrades for sure. It may even require Duke to come out and put in transformers. Just depends. We will see. I think long term, there's the potential for even adding some fast charging to the parking garage as well. That's another That's a big one. Fast charging is a lot of power real fast. So it may require some pretty significant upgrades. That's what we're trying to figure out right now.
I guess now are all on to what, phase 2?
Level 2, yeah, that's right. That's right.
And when we're looking at that's really with like the public fleet in mind, or is it public fleet plus, the county government fleet plus community use?
So there is already existing free public charging, both of the 6 in College Street, 4 in Oxford. Those will remain public charging. We may, depending on how fast things happen, we may come here 1 or 2 of them as a fleet only spot for temporary while we get all these other things upgraded. But the ones we're talking about for future are going to be fleet only. You know, we got to make sure our folks have a place to make sure they start getting the charge. Obviously, we're also really excited about the idea of potentially adding some motor pool vehicles as we move forward and that sort of thing. So we want to make sure everybody's got a spot. So yeah, we're mostly just talking about reserved for county vehicles. But we do already have some existing public charging programs. So this just really quickly, as you know, we're just finished running the conduit of both of these projects, and so we're going to be starting construction very soon on these solar canopy systems that are going on top of both of our parking garages. We didn't originally plan it this way, but because we will be adding some pretty significant electrical load to these garages, I thought it would be interesting just to kind of understand how much of that load could potentially be offset by the solar. It's going to be different between the 2 garages. So HHS building and the garage, so the old building, new building, and the garage are all actually on just 1 meter. So that entire system is metered, is a behind the meter system for that building. College Street, because it's an independent meter, independent building, it doesn't have a lot of electrical load at all. So there's very little. That's only 1 row of those panels is actually metered to the garage. The rest of it is we ran the conduit across the walkway to 35 as a way to offset more 35 usage. So that's why those 2 things are different. But to just give you a sense, it's a pretty significant size system that's going on top of the garages. And based on what we expect the annual production to be, it's enough to power 30 EVs for the entire HHS, which is, not bad. Again, I want to be clear, it's not like you're powering them with solar. This is an offset, right? Because you're likely charging the cars in the evening and the solar working. So I don't want to make it sound like we're powering it with the sun. It's not quite that, but it does help offset a lot of that increased electrical load that we'll see by adding all these charging stations.
These are net meters.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the hope is that even long term we'll add some battery storage at these facilities as well to help maximize and optimize the usage of every electron we get from the sun, right? So again, I don't want to get out of the weeds on that too much, but it is exciting, and it is nice to know that as we increase our consumption, we'll be offsetting that consumption with some renewables.
I would also note that 25,000 miles per year, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Right? So
we do drive.
Your average person doesn't drive
No.
25,000 miles per year in a car. So if you were thinking about it from like an average person's driving, it would be a lot more than these.
That's right. That is right. And we did make some pretty high assumptions, but we do have, again, if you're talking environmental health permits, those folks are driving a lot. And so I think it's still a safe assumption, but yeah, that's correct.
With the canopies, are we still able to park under those?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're going to have a total loss of like 4 spaces altogether. So it's not just pretty normal.
A little more on charging infrastructure. So another tool in the toolbox is WEX has a new EV charging card, and it functions really similar to their gas cards. And so my hope is that this will actually be a really seamless transition. The reporting and invoicing will all be the same. So this offers a couple of advantages. One is that we can use locally available DC fast chargers. There's not a ton of them, but hopefully building more, we utilize those. Town of Cary relies heavily on like publicly available charging infrastructure. They have like a Tesla fleet for their police, so they rely heavily on that. And then it also allows us to travel out of our electric vehicles. And we talked a little bit about level 1s, 2s, and 3s. I guess I'll note that there is just like a big gap within the level 2s. So our standard is like a 7.7 kilowatt charger, but there are some high powered level 2s that are relatively expensive that are like 19 kilowatt and can charge twice as fast. So we might find those to be useful to add.
Yeah, to your earlier point, Brownie, about just staff understanding how to charge, when to charge, where to charge, all of that. You know, ideally, WEX has been our go-to gas card forever. As this infrastructure continues to build out, it's not going to be any different than stopping for gas. You use your gas card, swipe it at a charge point, charge up for lunch, and long as day, right? So long term, again, the infrastructure needs to catch up to where we want to be, but it's getting there. There's as you all know, there's a ton of funding to build out exactly this. So, and the companies like WEX are playing. So it's pretty exciting.
So how fast is it charged now? I've heard people say hours, you charge on it, you can go overnight.
It depends entirely on which one of these you're using.
Does it depend on the vehicle too?
It can, yeah, absolutely. So the newer the vehicle, probably the faster the charging capabilities. But so, you know, if you're talking like the original Nissan Leaf I bought in 2012,
yeah,
not super fast.
The new Tesla will add like 200 miles in.
Yeah, but but if you if you stop at Tesla supercharger, I mean, yeah, you're there 15 minutes.
Yeah,
You're
30
gonna go.
minutes.
There's a wide gap. It just depends on, again, what type of charger.
It's also a big gap in how much they cost.
Totally true. Totally true. Yeah, DC fast charging is still very expensive. I mean, $80,000 to $100,000. And again, you have to have the infrastructure because they take a lot of power real fast. So,
Like a phase 3 transplant.
yeah. I mean, it can require some pretty serious upgrades.
I just wanted to briefly touch on networked chargers because I think we're going to have some future decision making around whether to network or not some of our chargers. We currently have network chargers at 3 locations, and basically this just allows for like communication to like an online portal or data access where we can see information about uptimes of our chargers, maintenance needs, how much they're being used. And so this is an example. This is just like unique users by location. So we have 60 different vehicles use our charge at the college site in July this year. We have one at the landfill.
It's just messy. It's just messy.
There's some obvious advantages of networking our chargers, but costs, like install costs, are like 4 times higher, and then there's ongoing costs of like the service fees. So most of our chargers are not networked at this point. I think as we start to get more, we have to think about things like demand charges or bi-directional charging and potential applications for that. Or if our drivers need to see remotely, if the charger is available, then we might see some more advantages to kind of standardizing more of the network charger. I know this graph is hard to see, but basically what I just want to illustrate here is this is from our network chargers in the college deck. So on the left is peak occupancy of those chargers in July of last year compared to peak occupancy in July of this year. So you can see that occupancy has doubled in a year. So demand is kind of rapidly rising for those
There's
chargers.
a lot more electric cars.
Right, and also some other interesting stuff like, okay, at 1 a.m. these chargers aren't really being used. So how can we, if we do have to commandeer a public chargers for a while, can we do it during certain hours of the day, when they're not being utilized as much. So this is what Jeremiah referred to earlier. We are piloting idle reduction technology on 2 of our ambulances this year. It's essentially what they call an auxiliary power unit, which is essentially batteries. So we're kind of turning our ambulances into hybrids. So what this battery does is it, instead of idling the engine, it provides like an electric source to power the electric functions of the vehicle. So we're talking about air conditioning and heating, lights, and whatever other equipment they need to power inside their ambulances. This is pretty well established technology, like Raleigh's using them, Duke Health has it on all of their ambulances, New York City's putting it on their entire ambulance fleet. And New York City's reporting a 35% reduction in engine hours. So the obvious advantages of that are, you know, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, reduced maintenance costs, and then extended life of the vehicles. And those ambulances are so expensive, if we can get another 2 years out of them, it's pretty significant cost savings. These systems aren't cheap. I think we're going to pay $27,000 for including install per ambulance. But payback is expected to be 2.5 years. So we'll have like, they'll have their own kind of telematics function. So that's what that dashboard will look like once we get those up and running.
How long does an ambulance typically last us?
5 years, 4 to 5 years. There can be a million reasons an ambulance goes out on us. Our kudos to our fleet maintenance folks, because they have stretched some of them significantly longer than that. And although we have just very recently made several ambulance purchases, you are well aware of that. But yeah, I mean, 4 to 5 years, I would think that given the fact that we bought so many recently, and then hopefully that is we're going to be utilizing them and optimizing routes and things like that a little bit better than we have in the past. We can get more out of them. Technology like this will help a lot too. One of the reasons that ambulances get such low mileage is because they don't put them on. They run all day long. And that's mostly because they have systems inside that have to continually power. They got refrigerated, medications and things that have to stay cool, things like that. This system does that for them without having to run the engine the whole time. And so it's tons of gas savings, tons of greenhouse gas emission savings. And as Jackie said, just so much fewer just engine hours. It's just I mean, in a perfect world, in like my ideal brain, this would be, you buy this at the same time. You just start from day one. I'll convince everybody. We'll get everybody there eventually. But yeah, that's about right. 4 years, 5 years, I think is about.
How long do those things last?
5 to 7.
So would you take it out and put it in another one if it was only 4 years?
I mean, ideally, it's extending the life of the ambulance that it's on. Install is very expensive because it's totally integrated until it's like, I think they said it's like 40 hours of labor or something. So we don't really want to be uninstalling these.
Something I learned throughout this process was how much every square inch of the inside of an ambulance matters. And they were like telling me, oh, it's about the size of a tackle box. And I heard immediately from everybody, that's too big, right? Like you can't take up that much space. You got to figure out a way to hide this, get it under the seat or, whatever. So I was surprised to learn how important every square inch of the interior is because of how much is needed. And so it's a lot to get these things in. So ideally, yeah, you would install it on a brand new ambulance. And they die together. It doesn't mean that at the end of it, if it does have something useful left, you can uninstall it and do something else with it. But I don't think that's our thought process today.
Jack, you may have said this, but are we like the county, we have the technology, the skills to install these, or we're sending that out, I'm assuming, yeah, okay.
They do it as they build the ambulance.
Oh. Okay. Ideally, yeah,
Ideally, yeah, retrofitting it once the ambulance is complete is much more.
is a bad idea, got it. And then, yeah, this is just stuff that we're currently working on or plan to work on soon. So strategy and innovations kind of taking the lead on developing motor pools. So we're trying to support them in that. Our new version of Faster, which is like our vehicle asset manager, just have like a motor pool scheduling reservation functionality, which should really help us in that development. I think a big thing that's going to be a challenge is like landing on some policies and procedures for electric take-home vehicles. How are we going to support those drivers?
What's the issue?
Because where are they gonna charge? How are we gonna reimburse them for charging?
What if they live in an apartment?
What if they live out of town?
They can't put in a charger at home. You know, the county's really not the place where we can be doing installations in people's homes to upfit them, you know. So for example, like I had to get a panel upgrade in my house in order to have it charged. You can't do that for an employee when they quit, right? Like there's not a way to do that. So just having some kind of mechanisms in place, whether it's ensuring that there's just widely available chargers, so they don't necessarily have to do it at home, or to come up with some kind of policy to make sure that we are reimbursing for folks that do charge themselves at their house.
Yep.
So there's just a lot.
It's all those kind of details, but they're good details to kind of wrestle with, right? Because these are all the kind of issues that people do have to like work. They kind of all have to figure out like how do we make this work, right? So, so I think it's good. And take-home stuff is generally, or take-home cars generally, is that like a perk, or is that sort of like in some cases they're actually really required to take them home as a function of like you need to roll out the morning with your vehicle?
There's a lot to answer there.
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
give you the
there's a lot to unpack there, because we are trying to minimize the number of take-home vehicles for sure. But there are certain instances, and it's primarily zero. Those are all take-home, right? Pretty much every deputy, and that is a part of the job. And because that's the bulk of the fleet, you know, again, that's why coming up with some sort of procedure or policy around that is going to be so critical in moving us forward, getting where we want to be. The rest of the folks, again, we have really tried to minimize take-home vehicles as much as possible, but
There's none that are perks though.
there's none
All
that
job
are works.
related.
It's all job. So permits and inspections is a good example. They work in quadrants, right? And so they typically work in a quadrant closer to where they live. You know? So
We just redid that policy like a year or two ago to minimize the take homes.
it's a lot though. It is a big domino effect.
Well, if there are policy issues related to that, I mean, because that's like we've adopted, I think, really good policies. We're seeing the results from them. And I think just if there's other things that are needed, because there probably will need to be some sort of like you probably can't put all this cost on the employee, right? So people will be like, well, I can't do that. In some cases, it is kind of expensive, but maybe the county can't absorb all those costs either. It's like there's some in-between stuff, right? So there'll have to be some cost-sharing policies or procedures or something. All right, so one other question I have is, what about the transit fleets? Which seems like other than the sheriff, right? Like that's the other big one, right? That's what we actually spend a lot of time driving around.
So yeah, mobility is a big one for sure.
And they are participating in the telematics program, which should be helpful. Getting some more details on like where they stop, how long they're operating, daily mileage.
Yes, and I'll share that we were contacted by the state about participating in a electrification fleet study for mobility. So it's not firmed up yet, but our folks are definitely interested. So more to come.
But I'm just observing like none of it's counted. These presentations look good, except we're leaving all that out, right? Which I'm assuming like there's not much to report there right now, right? So if we include it, but we're not including it in the presentation because we're technically contracting services, right? Does that mean the county doesn't actually own these vehicles, that our contracting partner owns them, or are they actually county-owned vehicles?
They are county owned, the state provides like a 90% match, it's only paying 10%, but they are ours. So, and they were included in the original study, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. And they buy all of their vehicles via state contract. And that's part of the requirement in terms of getting that 90%. And what we are starting to see is the state contract is starting to have EVs on.
Yeah.
Right?
As an
And
option.
As an
maintenance,
option.
yeah, they just have one now.
Yeah, so it, again, it'll be a little while before you'll have a pretty robust market for sort of the smaller buses like the non-mobility uses currently, but it's coming. We're starting to see those show up on state contract, and once they're on state contract, life gets a lot easier because we can make those purchases without doing a separate RFP process.
As we already talked about, getting like a pursuit rated EV that really works for our sheriff office's needs will be key. And so here's the Tesla from Carrie in the bottom right, Durham's Mustang Mach-E in the bottom left, and then that Chevy Blazer that Jeremiah mentioned earlier, which seems like it has the ground clearance and maybe the range that might make our folks most comfortable. We are still waiting on final guidance on how to apply for rebates and incentives. So we hope to be able to pursue a $7,500 rebate for each of those EVs that we plan on purchasing this year. And also some refunds on charging infrastructure as well. The strategy and innovation is currently updating the vehicle usage policy, which reflects a lot of the stuff that we talked about already in this presentation. And then also just making sure that our electric vehicle supply equipment is well thought about in the COOP process as well.
And Tom, I just want to touch base on time, and I think, Brownie, you said you have to leave at 11:30, right? And it looks like we have a closed session, so unless there's any other questions, we probably need to move on.
Yes.
Okay. Announcements, September 15th will be our next meeting, right here in this place. And I think, Sarah, you just wanted to mention to us, for us to be aware of the strategic partnerships and try to do some outreach maybe around climate, environmental, nonprofits.
We are looking at our upcoming FY25 grant cycle to increase the number of applications that we're receiving in the environment category priority grants. So we are looking for opportunities for outreach in the community through that. We would love some insight either from the subcommittee or other folks that you might be able to put us in touch with. We plan on having Jeremiah and Jennifer and Dane join us at our next meeting to do a panel to help kind of discuss focus areas. But yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, then I guess we go into the closed session. So in the closed session, I guess, Michael, you need to state something for us as well.
Yeah, we need a motion pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3 closed session to discuss attorney-client matter. And we don't anticipate any action when we get it done, but period.
Right.
Do we need to state? Besides the board members.
Which staff do we need?
Yeah.
We don't know who we need. Do we need any staff? I mean, that's a question. I don't know.
Wanting to ask if Jeremiah and I can join, and I would have asked Dane to join, but unfortunately he's not. Okay.
Yes, I suggest that Jeremiah and Sybil stay.
Sounds good. Cool. All right, I'm new. We go into the session.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Yep.